help us take us inside the room. Obviously, I was saying this was, a moment that we didn't see during the Trump administration, and I explained the reasons why. But one of the things I noticed yesterday is that people were smiling. They were happy to be there in the room. Take us inside that room. What was it like?
Zerlina, it was a family reunion. There are some of us who've had the privilege of going into the White House the last many months that President Biden's been in office. But for the vast majority of Obama alum from the East Wing and the West Wing, this was the first time that they were coming back to the White House since they left office in 2016. So it was a reunion for all of us together who had been in the trenches of the campaign, who had seen the historic occurrings in that White House, the historic accomplishments. And so we were feeling that, but we were also feeling just how important that space is for all of the American people. It truly is the people's house. And regrettably, we had an occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that treated it as his own private reserve, conducted a set of kind of reprehensible exclusive politics from that space. And yesterday, for many of us, was a reminder of the project, the community project that we're all a part of, and the historic tradition of it. But there was something else going on there too, Zerlina. If you've spent any time in that building and most of our government buildings, there isn't anyone who looks like Barack Obama or Michelle Obama on those walls. And now, after close to 250 years of recorded presidential history in this country, we have those portraits going up in that space that was built with the hands of slave labor. We tend to forget that a quarter of our presidents and the vast majority of the early presidents who are represented in the White House owned slaves. And the only representation that we ever saw of blacks in that White House were caricatures in the wallpaper, really disturbing imagery. But now we have these graceful, dignified representations that take the present forward into the future with a kind of permanence that's altogether stunning considering the last 4 years that we lived through.
Overnight, I've been sort of in deep thought about the symbolism behind the portrait of the former president in sort of the white space utilized on the canvas. But I'm not somebody who took art history, so I'm not going to do that on air. But in terms of just the symbolism, and some of the things they spoke about yesterday, in a lot of ways, I've been thinking about the 2008 campaign message of hope and change. And in a way, that's what many Americans felt on the election night in 2008. They felt hopeful for the future because we were changing as a country.
Yes.
But then there were the people that were not happy. Can you talk a bit about how yesterday was a reminder of the fact that before Donald Trump came to power, we were on a path where we saw the possibility of what America could truly become outside of the idea that it is a white Christian nation, that we could be that multiracial democracy, that was becoming real.
Yeah, Zerlina, you may not be steeped in art history, but you certainly know American history backwards and forwards, and you appreciate that. Progress is not a linear thing in America. We've had these fits and starts before, all the way from Reconstruction through the treatment of African Americans during the period of the Great Depression to the second civil rights movement, right up through the renaissance of that movement through the George Floyd era. We've made progress in fits and starts, and every step forward is met, regrettably, by tragedy, by ugliness, and a determination of some to resist the bending of the arc towards justice. And yet, we persevere. I think that First Lady Michelle Obama really gave profound expression to that when she talked about her own personal biography, the journey of her parents from the Deep South to Illinois, working in the service sector, doing their best to create a new America, and that she herself could never imagine herself in that role because there were others who made the decision about who gets to enter these spaces or not. So history was disrupted in 2008, and we made tremendous progress. But in our country, regrettably, we have to be vigilant about that progress. And yesterday reminded me of that. Our ability to create a more perfect union is not an assured thing. Our vigilance, our hard work is something that is required of all of us as citizens of this country. Yesterday, I will tell you, I was thinking about the two African-American women who testified before the January 6th committee from Georgia, who are election workers, who've done their civic duty in order to really kind of hold up community and inclusion, and were abused terribly by the previous president, his cabal. I thought about them yesterday, and I was, for myself, dedicating my own presence there in the spirit of the moment to their work and their instinct of what America is. And I think that's now displayed on those walls.
I mean, there were so many moments I thought about yesterday. I also thought about when I traveled with the president to go to Selma for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And I just think about the fact that Bloody Sunday happened because Black people wanted to vote. That was it.
Yep.
And they were beating people up. People died because we wanted to vote. That's it. You know, we didn't want to overthrow the government or become in charge, become the president at that time. We just wanted to participate and engage in the democracy as promised by the Constitution. And yet we were met with violence.
Historically, our citizenship has been seen as a great danger to those who, subscribe to things like white supremacy, the Great Replacement theory, who have a sense of their own kind of unique privilege in the history of the country and are determined to erase the absolutely true narrative of involvement. I'll tell you, Zerlina, I was thinking, it's funny, I was thinking yesterday of Congressman John Lewis and how he would have drawn all kinds of inspiration from that arc. But I also thought of my time as, somebody who worked in the White House as White House political director. I had this habit where I would drift over from the West Wing and spend time in the East Wing as school groups would come in to tour the building. And I would listen to what they were being told about the history of the space. And invariably, I would have to remind the tour guides that the building was built by the hands of slaves, and it was important to impart that to youngsters. They would tell them stories of how Dolly Madison saved the painting of George Washington. I'd say, no, Dolly Madison sent her slaves in to save the painting of George Washington. Clear about who has held up the scaffolding and the foundation of this democracy generation through generation. And yesterday I was feeling all of that. President Obama, and particularly Mrs. Obama, constantly reminded us of that debt that we owe to past and future generations to carry that story forward and to make sure that we're doing all that we could to include all Americans in the narrative. I think that the artist Robert McCurdy and Sharon Sprung, by the way, that Sharon Sprung portrait is extraordinary. Her use of color really brings something of the soulfulness of our former First Lady. So they did a really great job of capturing this.
Ambassador Patrick Espard, thank you so much for starting us off on this historic day. We're going to be talking about that portrait of the former First Lady right now. Thank you so much again. Please stay safe. Michelle Obama spoke beautifully on Wednesday about how she hopes that the portraits of her and former President Obama will now hang in the White House will help kids across America, quote, see something more for themselves. But it wasn't what she said that drew some of the strongest reaction from Black Americans. It was how she wore her hair in braids. As Eugene Daniels, White House correspondent for Politico, tweeted, quote, something that will mean a lot to Black people across America. Former First Lady Michelle Obama wearing braids at the unveiling of her official White House portrait. And that is just the latest example of how Michelle Obama is our country's first and so far our only Black First Lady, and how she broadened perceptions and our understanding of Black people, Black Americans, and Black culture. Joining us now is Krish Omara Vignararaja. Can you help me with that? Can you please correct my pronunciation? I apologize.
Of course.
I didn't do well with that.
No, sorry. It's not an easy name. It's Krish Omara Vignararaja.
Vignararaja. Thank you so much for being here. You're the former policy director for Michelle Obama and president and CEO of the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. I apologize again for the name. I usually practice a few times. I only practiced 2 times. That was not enough times. But first, I just want to get your reaction to what you saw on social media about Michelle Obama wearing braids in her hair. I mean, I know what braids in the summertime mean. That means that I don't have time to do my hair. You know, I'm out, it's hot, I'm sweating, I'm going to the pool, maybe the beach. You know, Black people know it. We have all kinds of associations with braids, but it feels like it was a very intentional choice. There's a lot of other ways she could have worn her hair on that day. Talk about what it meant to see her hair in braids.
It is interesting when you think that something as simple as, you know, wearing your hair in braids can be revolutionary, but that's the reality of where we are still today. And you're exactly right in saying that that did seem like an intentional decision. I think Michelle Obama is the master of memorable lines. She's also the queen of grace and, you know, power of subtlety. She knows how to make a statement without saying a word. And I do think that what you saw and how she chose to wear her hair, highlighting how momentous their presidency was and what it meant for her to serve as our first lady.
And really, one of the things that struck me when I saw the image immediately, I mean, I tweeted it just wow, because that was my first reaction. But also when I looked closer and I looked into her eyes, I not only saw her, but I also saw myself. It's a little bit of a side eye, but not in the way people might think. It's almost, there's a soulfulness in her eyes. She's sort of it's a little bit to the side. It's a little bit of a deep look into our souls. Can you speak to what you see? Break down this image a bit for us. What are some of the messages that stand out to you, just in terms of the look on her face and the expression in this portrait?
Yeah, I think it certainly reflects that piercing glance. She knows that she is unique amongst the portraits of the First Lady. And I think that in the gravitas that you see portrayed in her portrait, I think she brings that. I think the artist did a phenomenal job of bringing that to life. She was a First Lady who brought humor and such levity to the First Lady role, but she also knew the weight that bore on her shoulders because of what she represented. And she took that responsibility incredibly seriously. It was reflected in every day of how she managed the White House when she talked about it being the people's house. You know, as the ambassador mentioned, in terms of school children coming in every day, she wanted people to not just feel like it was accessible, but for the house to be accessible. She wanted people who had never seen the hallowed halls of the White House to be able to walk in it. And, you know, even in a high school mentoring program that she ran for local schools, part of what drove that commitment was, sort of a mantra of see it, be it. And I think that for her, she wanted to show the grace, but also the power of the position she held. And obviously she held it so well and did so much good with it.
It's so amazing to think about what she represented, but also in the context of this particular moment, because we all know that while we look at that beautiful portrait and we look into her eyes, and as I said, you know, there's sort of this look that she's giving us, you know, that look is sort of for a reason, because there were a lot of critics of the former First Lady who unfairly smeared her with saying all kinds of really ugly things that I'm not going to repeat. But speak to this idea that she is defying those critics. Especially the ones who smeared her, questioned even her femininity. I mean, even the fact that, you know, it's sort of like a very feminine material, the dress, and that her shoulders are exposed. I remember back to the beginning, the portrait being a big deal, the original portrait when her arms were out, the sleeveless shirt. So speak to this idea that she has existed and in defiance of some of those critics who have questioned everything about her as a person, including her femininity.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to understand just the evolution of her role. You know, at points people questioned whether she was a liability to, you know, then presidential candidate Barack Obama, but obviously she is the most popular person, you know, woman in the world. I think she obviously gained a armor that she had to, you know, that thick skin in order to survive the public scrutiny and the unfair standards that were applied to her when she made a comment about, you know, how she viewed the greatness of this country. And yet, you know, the former president, Trump, could get away with saying, make America great again. And I think that, you know, in yesterday's event, what you saw was a reflection of not just this returning to normalcy and tradition, but it was also a remembrance of what was so refreshingly new and revolutionary about the Obama presidency, and how she grew into this role, even though it was a role that she never relished to begin with, right? And I think that that's where she clearly rose above all of the critics. She became popular not because she sought popularity, but she became popular because she was what she always wanted to be, her authentic self. And I think in that portrait, it captures all of the facets of what makes Michelle Robinson Obama.
I love these portraits so much. They're so beautiful. I want to frame them and put them in my home, like they are in the White House forever. Krish, thank you so much for being here. Michelle Obama's legacy is so important. She's given so many Black women like me, so many women like me, the freedom to take up space, to be ourselves. For every woman out there who's been told, especially Black women who have been told they're too much, they're too loud, they're too angry, they're too this or that, Michelle Obama has given us permission to just be, period. That's it. Krish, thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.